My name is Ruth Pemberton, and I'm 68 years old. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like you're a ghost at the dinner table, a shadow in family photos, someone they invite only because the neighbors might talk? That was me for 15 years, living on the crumbs of my son's attention while his wealthy wife treated me like something she'd scrape off her designer shoes. But on one rainy October evening, on my way to my father-in-law's birthday party, a party where I knew I'd be seated with the help, I made a split-second decision that changed everything. I stopped to help a stranger with a broken-down car. That simple act of kindness would expose the rot in my family and reveal secrets that had been buried for decades. This isn't just a story about revenge, though there's plenty of that. It's about how a forgotten old woman finally learned that respect isn't given. It's demanded. Before we begin, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly speaks to you. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me tell you what really happened that night. The email arrived at 6 a.m, just as I was tying my apron to head down to the flower market. The notification sound, that cold electronic ping, made my stomach tighten before I even read it. Victoria's emails always came early, like she wanted to ruin my day before it even started. "Mother," it began. Not Mom or Ruth or even Dear Ruth, just Mother, like I was a title, not a person. "William Sr.'s 75th birthday celebration is October 15th at 7 p.m. You should arrive on time and dress appropriately. The dress code is cocktail formal. Please confirm receipt." I stared at those capital letters. Should, appropriately. Even through email, Victoria managed to make me feel small. My fingers trembled as I set down my phone and looked around my tiny South Philadelphia apartment. The peeling wallpaper, the radiator that clanged all night, the single window overlooking the alley where people dumped their trash. This was what appropriate looked like for me now. 3 years. That's how long it had been since they'd invited me to my granddaughter Emma's birthday. 3 years of watching her grow up through Facebook photos that Victoria posted for her society friends. Emma at riding lessons. Emma at private school gala. Never Emma with Grandma Ruth. The phone rang, startling me. Robert's name flashed on the screen. My son. My boy who used to climb into my lap with skinned knees and call me his best mommy in the whole world. "Mom?" His voice was thin, stressed. "Did you get Victoria's email?" "Good morning to you too, sweetheart." "Mom, please, this is important. William Sr., there's going to be major investors there. Sterling Capital. They're considering a $500 million development deal with us." "That's wonderful for you, honey." "Mom, I need you to understand. Victoria is under enormous pressure. If you could just please don't make her uncomfortable. Wear something nice. Maybe that blue dress from Cousin Sarah's wedding?" "Robert, that dress is 12 years old." "It's fine, Mom. Classic. Just, please, for me?" The pleading in his voice broke my heart. When had my strong, confident boy become this man who begged? When had he started calling his father-in-law Dad, while his own mother lived in a roach-infested apartment 20 minutes away? "I'll be there," I said quietly. "And Mom, maybe don't mention the flower stand. If anyone asks, just say you're retired." After he hung up, I sat on my bed and opened the closet. The blue dress hung there like a ghost of better times. I pulled it out, noting the small moth hole near the hem, the way the fabric had faded from navy to something closer to gray. But it was the best I had. In the back of the closet, behind shoes I never wore anymore, was a cardboard box labeled Thomas's Things. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were his watch, his wedding ring, and a manila envelope of old papers, documents from his business partnership with William Sr. back in the 70s. Victoria had asked for these papers once, said she needed them for tax purposes. I'd said I'd lost them. Something in her eager eyes had made me lie. I touched Thomas's watch, remembering his strong hands, how he'd built his auto repair business from nothing, how he'd believed in honest work and treating people right. "Never let them make you small, Ruthie," he used to say. "You're worth more than all their money combined." But Thomas had been gone for 15 years, and somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten his words. I'd let them make me small. I'd accepted the crumbs they threw me. The reluctant invitations, the separate table, the hushed embarrassment when their society friends asked about Robert's mother. I hung the blue dress on the bathroom door and ran my fingers over the worn fabric. Tomorrow, I'd take it to the dry cleaners and pray they could work miracles. I'd spend money I didn't have to look appropriate for people who'd already decided I'd never be good enough. Looking back now, I should have thrown that email in the trash. Should have spent October 15th watching my shows with a cup of tea. But something in me, maybe it was Thomas's voice, maybe it was just stubborn hope, made me decide to go. I had no idea that God had other plans for that night. Plans that started with a broken-down Mercedes on Highway 9. By 4 o'clock on October 15th, the sky had turned the color of old pewter, and rain was starting to spit against my windshield. My ancient Honda Civic, bought used in 2010 and held together with prayer and duct tape, wheezed as I merged onto Highway 9. The blue dress hung in a dry cleaning bag in the back seat. $40 I couldn't afford, making it look almost respectable. I'd left early, giving myself an extra hour to get to Rittenhouse Square. Victoria would find something to criticize no matter what, but at least she couldn't say I was late. The radio played oldies, and I hummed along to Stand By Me, trying to calm my nerves. That's when I saw her. About 2 miles past the Brookfield exit, a black Mercedes sat on the shoulder with its hazard lights blinking. Smoke rose from under the hood, and a woman stood beside it, cell phone pressed to her ear, her expensive suit getting soaked in the rain. She was young, maybe late 30s, with the kind of polish that came from money. Real money, not the desperate kind Victoria tried so hard to project. I should have kept driving. Every minute I stopped would be another mark against me in Victoria's mental ledger. But something about the woman's frustrated gestures, the way she kept looking at her dead phone screen, reminded me of myself the day Thomas died. Stranded at the hospital with no way home, invisible to everyone rushing past, I pulled over. The woman looked up, surprised, as I rolled down my window. "Need help, honey?" "My phone's dead, and I don't know what's wrong with this damn car." Her voice had a slight Boston accent, educated, but not snobbish. "I have a critical meeting at 7. "Pop the hood. Let me take a look." She stared at me, this old woman in a carefully pressed but obviously dated outfit, like I'd offered to perform brain surgery. "Do you know about cars?" "My husband ran an auto shop for 30 years. I picked up a thing or two." The rain was getting heavier as I grabbed Thomas's old toolkit from my trunk. I'd never had the heart to remove it. The Mercedes's engine was a thing of beauty, even smoking and overheated. It took me less than a minute to spot the problem. A blown radiator hose. "You're not going anywhere without a new hose," I told her. "But I can do a temporary fix to get you to a shop." "How?" I pulled out the electrical tape Thomas always swore by. "This'll hold for maybe 20 miles if you go easy. There's a good shop off exit 31. Honest folks won't overcharge you because of the car." As I worked, wrapping the split hose carefully, the woman watched me with something like amazement. "I'm Natalie," she said. "Natalie Sterling." "Ruth Pemberton." "Ruth, why did you stop? Everyone else just drove past." I tightened the last wrap of tape, my hands black with engine grease. "Because, honey, I know what it's like to be stuck with nobody to help." The fix took 15 minutes, but by the time I finished, my dress was splattered with oil, and my carefully styled hair hung limp from the rain. Natalie pulled out a business card from her purse, thick cardstock, elegant font. "Please take this. I owe you dinner at the very least. Where were you heading? I've made you late." "Just a family thing," I said, sliding the card into my pocket without really looking at it. "Birthday party up in Rittenhouse Square." Something flickered in her eyes. "The Ashford estate? You know it?" "I'm familiar with the family. William Ashford's birthday, right? Big society event?" I nodded, trying to wipe the grease off my hands with an old napkin. "My son married into the family." "Then we're going to the same place. I'm the 7 o'clock meeting." She looked at my oil-stained dress, then at her watch. "Oh, God, you're going to be late because of me." "It's fine. They expect me to disappoint them anyway." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Natalie's expression changed, something sharp and knowing entering her eyes. "Follow me," she said. "If anyone gives you trouble about being late, tell them you were with me." I wanted to tell her it wouldn't matter, that Victoria would find a way to punish me regardless. But Natalie was already getting into her car, and I realized I now had exactly 12 minutes to make a 20-minute drive. The Ashford estate squatted on Rittenhouse Square like a monument to old money, all limestone and leaded glass, with gates that belonged on a palace. By the time I pulled up 45 minutes late, my Honda looked like something the gardener would drive, and even he probably had something nicer. The security guard at the gate looked at me like I'd taken a wrong turn from the homeless shelter. "Name?" "Ruth Pemberton. I'm Robert Ashford's mother." He scrolled through his tablet, frowning. "You're not on the VIP list. I have you down for general admission. You'll need to park in the auxiliary lot." The auxiliary lot was behind the service buildings, a quarter-mile walk from the main house. As I parked between a catering van and a landscaping truck, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. The rain had destroyed my hair. The oil stains on my dress looked like I'd been working under a car, which I had, and my face had that particular shade of exhaustion that no amount of drugstore makeup could hide. The walk to the main house felt like a march to execution. I could hear the party, laughter, clinking glasses, a string quartet playing something elegant. 200 of Philadelphia's finest, and me looking like I'd crawled out of a dumpster. Victoria appeared at the service entrance before I could knock. She stood there in a white Versace gown that probably cost more than I made in a year, diamonds dripping from her ears, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. "What have you done?" "Victoria, you look like a bag lady, a literal bag lady. Do you have any idea who's here? The mayor, the Worthingtons, Sterling Capital." She said the last name like it should mean something profound to me. "And you show up looking like someone who stopped to help a stranger? Don't be cute with me, Ruth. This is exactly why Robert didn't want—" She stopped herself, but I knew how that sentence ended. Why Robert didn't want me here. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in, and pulled me through the service hallway. We passed the kitchen staff, who averted their eyes with the practiced discretion of people who'd seen too much rich people drama. "You can't be seen like this. We'll put you in the corner with the auxiliary staff table." "The auxiliary staff?" "The nannies and drivers. They have a table in the back. You'll fit right in." We emerged into the main ballroom, and for a moment I forgot my humiliation. The room was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, gold-leafed moldings, tables draped in silk. And there was Robert, my son, standing near the bar in a tuxedo, laughing at something William Sr. was saying. He looked so handsome, so successful, so much like his father, if Thomas had been born to money instead of earning it with his hands. His eyes met mine across the room. I saw the flash of horror quickly suppressed as he took in my appearance. He started to move toward me, but Victoria's hand on his arm stopped him. She whispered something, and he nodded, turning back to his conversation. That's when I saw her. Emma, my granddaughter, 5 years old and perfect in a pink party dress. She broke away from her nanny and ran toward me, arms outstretched. "Grandma Ruth! Grandma Ruth!" For one precious moment, I had my arms full of grandchild, breathing in her little girl smell of strawberry shampoo and innocence. "Hello, my precious girl." "I missed you. Mommy said you might not come." "I'll always come for you, sweetheart." Victoria materialized beside us like an avenging angel. "Emma, darling, let's not bother Grandma right now. She needs to freshen up." "But I want to sit with Grandma." "Grandma has her own special seat," Victoria said, her smile sharp as glass. "Now go back to Melissa." Emma was led away, looking back at me with confused eyes. Victoria steered me to a table in the farthest corner, partially hidden by a potted palm. 3 nannies and 2 drivers sat there, looking uncomfortable in their formal clothes. "Enjoy the party," Victoria said, her voice dripping honey-coated poison. "Try not to draw attention to yourself." As she walked away, I sank into my chair, feeling every one of my 68 years. Through the palm fronds, I could see the main table where William Sr. held court, where Robert and Victoria played the perfect couple, where my granddaughter sat like a little princess. And I sat with the help, invisible again, wondering why I'd ever thought this night would be different. The nannies and drivers at my table were kind enough to pretend I belonged there. Marcus, the Worthingtons' driver, even poured me water from the pitcher. We didn't rate champagne service. I sat there watching the real party happen 40 feet away, separated by an ocean of social hierarchy. "First time at one of these?" asked Melissa, Emma's nanny, a young woman with tired eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I'm Robert's mother." The table went silent. They all knew who I was, the grandmother who wasn't allowed to babysit, the mother-in-law Victoria complained about to anyone who'd listen. Melissa touched my hand gently, a small gesture of solidarity from one invisible woman to another. William Sr. stood up, tapping his champagne flute. The room fell silent. At 75, he still commanded attention, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd never worked a day of physical labor but considered himself self-made because he'd turned his father's millions into billions. "Friends, family, esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating my birthday. It's about celebrating the future of Ashford Industries." I watched Robert stand beside him, my boy looking so proud, so eager to please this man who'd become more of a father to him than his actual father's memory. "As many of you know," William continued, "we're on the verge of our most ambitious project yet, a $500 million development that will reshape Philadelphia's skyline. And tonight, we hope to welcome our partners from Sterling Capital into the Ashford family." A murmur ran through the crowd. Sterling Capital, even I'd heard of them. They were the kind of money that made other money nervous. "Their representative should be arriving any moment," William said, checking his Rolex. "And when she does, we'll show her what Ashford hospitality really means." Victoria stood up, radiant in her designer gown. "While we wait, I'd like to say something about family values. At Ashford Industries, we believe in tradition, in knowing where you come from and who belongs at your table." Her eyes flickered toward my corner, so quickly I might have imagined it. "We're selective about who we do business with because we're selective about who we are." The crowd applauded. I shrunk deeper into my chair, wishing I could disappear entirely. Through the palm fronds, I saw a familiar figure. Maxwell Porter, one of Thomas's old lawyers. He'd aged well, still distinguished in his 70s. Our eyes met, and he started walking toward me, but Victoria intercepted him, guiding him toward the bar with practiced ease. "Your daughter-in-law's something else," Marcus muttered beside me. "She's protective of her family," I said, the automatic defense bitter on my tongue. "That what you call it?" Before I could answer, there was a commotion at the main entrance. The massive double doors opened, and the room seemed to hold its breath. William Sr. straightened his tie. Victoria touched her diamonds. Robert pulled at his cuffs, a nervous habit from childhood. But nobody entered. The moment stretched, awkward and tense. William's smile began to falter. Victoria whispered something to the event coordinator, who scurried toward the entrance. That's when I remembered Thomas, and the life we'd built together before everything fell apart. He'd started with nothing, just a kid from Fishtown with grease under his nails and a dream. When he met William Sr. in 1975, they'd been equals, two young men with ambition. Thomas had even invested in William's first big project, putting up half the capital from the sale of his father's house. "Whatever happened to those papers?" Thomas had asked me once, near the end, when the cancer had eaten away everything but his worry for my future. "The partnership documents? They're important, Ruthie, worth something." But after he died, grief had swallowed everything. Robert had been in college, needing tuition. The medical bills had taken our savings. And when Victoria had appeared, beautiful, sophisticated, everything I wasn't, she'd swept Robert into her world so fast I could barely breathe. "Mom never talks about Dad," I'd overheard Robert tell Victoria once. "I think it hurts too much." But that wasn't true. I didn't talk about Thomas because Victoria had made it clear that auto mechanics didn't belong in her family narrative. She'd rewritten Robert's history, erasing the boy who'd grown up in his father's shop, who'd known the name of every tool before he knew the alphabet. A server finally approached our table, not with champagne, but with the house salad, wilted lettuce and cheap dressing, while the real guests dined on lobster thermidor. I pushed it around my plate, my appetite gone. "Grandma Ruth!" Emma had escaped again, running toward me with a crayon drawing. "I made this for you!" It was a picture of two stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. "It's us," she announced proudly. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Victoria appeared like a storm cloud. "Emma, I told you—" But her scolding was cut short by another commotion at the entrance. This time, someone actually entered, and my heart stopped. It was Natalie Sterling, transformed from the rain-soaked woman on Highway 9 into something that made even Victoria look underdressed. She stood in the doorway, scanning the room with those sharp eyes, looking for something, looking for someone. Looking, I realized with a sudden chill, for me. At that moment, watching Natalie Sterling scan the room, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. You know that feeling when you realize your whole life is about to change? When you can actually feel the ground shifting under your feet? That was me, clutching my granddaughter's drawing while my daughter-in-law's perfect world started to crack. Have you ever been made to feel worthless by your own family? Like you're an embarrassment they have to tolerate? If you have, then you understand why what happened next felt like divine justice. Please, if this story resonates with you, take a moment to like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Now let me tell you what Natalie Sterling did when she found me. Natalie Sterling commanded the room without saying a word. She wore a black Saint Laurent suit that whispered money, her hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably cost $300 to achieve. The entire Ashford crowd, people who wouldn't notice if their own houses were on fire, stopped mid-conversation to stare. William Sr. practically sprinted across the ballroom, his age forgotten in the presence of $2 billion worth of investment potential. Victoria glided behind him, having deposited Emma back with her nanny, her smile so bright it could have powered the chandelier. "Ms. Sterling," William boomed, extending his hand. "We're so honored you could make it." "Mr. Ashford?" Natalie's handshake was brief, professional. "I apologize for my lateness. I had car trouble on Highway 9. "Oh, how dreadful," Victoria gushed. "I hope nothing serious." It could have been. Fortunately, a good Samaritan stopped to help. Natalie's eyes were already moving past them, searching the crowd. Without her, I'd still be standing in the rain. "Well, thank God for the kindness of strangers," William said. "Now let me introduce you to our board members. In a moment." Natalie's tone was pleasant but firm, the voice of someone who'd never been interrupted in her life. "First, I need to thank the woman who helped me. I believe she said she was coming here." Victoria's smile flickered. "Here? To our party?" "Yes, Ruth something. Pemberton, I think?" The silence that followed could have choked a horse. William's face went through several expressions: confusion, calculation, then a forced joviality that fooled no one. "Ruth, our Ruth." He said it like I was a family pet. "I didn't realize. She's Robert's mother," Victoria said quickly. "She's around here somewhere." "Here. Around here somewhere?" Natalie's eyebrow arched slightly. "At your father-in-law's birthday celebration, and you don't know where your mother-in-law is." I should have stayed quiet, should have let Victoria squirm. But Emma chose that moment to point directly at me and announce in her piping voice, "Grandma Ruth's over there, with the nannies." 200 heads turned toward my corner. I felt like a spotlight had been turned on, exposing every stain on my dress, every gray hair that had escaped my ruined styling, every year of being deemed not good enough. Natalie's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went cold. She walked toward me, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. William and Victoria scrambled after her, their carefully choreographed evening spinning out of control. "Mrs. Pemberton." Natalie extended her hand to me, ignoring the palm tree I was hidden behind, the shabby table, the way the servers had clearly been instructed to treat us like furniture. "I was hoping to find you." I stood, aware of how I looked, how I smelled faintly of motor oil, how my dress hung wrong after getting wet. "Ms. Sterling, your car make it okay?" "Perfect. 20 miles to exit 31, just like you said. The shop owner, Mike, I think, said you'd sent several people his way over the years. Said you never took a finder's fee." "Good people don't need fees to help each other." "No," she said, looking directly at Victoria. "They don't." Victoria inserted herself between us, smooth as silk. "Mother, why don't you go freshen up? You look a bit weathered." "She looks like someone who stopped in the rain to help a stranger," Natalie said, "which is more than I can say for the 3 Mercedes and 2 BMWs that passed me without slowing down." "Well, Ruth's always been very hands-on," Victoria said, making it sound like a disease. "She used to work at her husband's auto shop, very blue-collar, salt of the earth, you know." "Her husband's auto shop?" Natalie tilted her head. "You mean Thomas Pemberton? Of Pemberton Automotive?" The name hung in the air. Victoria blinked. "You knew him?" "I know of him. He was one of the original investors in Ashford Industries, wasn't he, William? Back in '75? My team pulled the records during our due diligence." William's face had gone pale. That was a long time ago. Thomas passed away years ago. 15 years ago, I said quietly. "Cancer." "I'm sorry for your loss," Natalie said, and somehow the way she said it made it feel fresh, like someone actually cared. "His initial investment would be worth quite a lot today, I imagine." "Thomas was bought out," William said quickly. Too quickly. "Everything was handled properly." "I'm sure it was." Natalie's smile was sharp as winter. "Mrs. Pemberton, would you join me for a drink? I'd love to hear more about your husband." "Mother really should—" Victoria started. "I wasn't asking you." Natalie's voice could have frozen hell. "I was asking Mrs. Pemberton, who, I might add, is the only person at this party who's shown me genuine kindness without knowing who I was or what I could do for them." She offered me her arm, like I was someone who mattered. "Shall we?" I looked at Victoria's stunned face, at Robert's confusion, at William's barely controlled panic. Then I took Natalie Sterling's arm and let her lead me into the light. Natalie Sterling led me to the main bar like I was visiting royalty, not a woman in an oil-stained dress who'd been hidden with the help. The crowd parted for us, or rather, for her, and I caught glimpses of familiar faces twisted in confusion. Who was this bedraggled old woman on the billion-dollar arm? "Champagne?" Natalie asked me. "I wouldn't know the difference between champagne and ginger ale," I admitted. "Honesty. How refreshing." She ordered 2 glasses of something French that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Tell me about Thomas." "He was a good man, worked hard, built his business from nothing." "And his partnership with William Ashford?" I hesitated. We were standing in the man's house, drinking his champagne, surrounded by his guests. But something in Natalie's eyes told me she already knew more than she was saying. "They were friends once, young men with big dreams. Thomas put up half the money for William's first development, sold his father's house to do it." "Do you have documentation of this investment?" "Some old papers. Victoria asked for them once, but something felt wrong about it." Natalie nodded slowly. "Your instincts were good. Mrs. Pemberton, Ruth, there's something you should know about why I'm really here tonight." But before she could continue, Victoria materialized with Robert in tow, her face a mask of controlled fury wrapped in a society smile. "Natalie, may I call you Natalie? We should really discuss the Sterling Capital proposal. After all, that's why you're here." "Is it?" Natalie took a sip of champagne. "I thought I was here for William's birthday." "Of course, but surely—" "Mrs. Ashford." Natalie's voice cut through Victoria's babbling like a blade. "Why is your mother-in-law sitting with the hired help?" The question landed like a bomb. The conversations around us stopped. Even the string quartet seemed to play quieter. Mother prefers—" "I prefer?" I found my voice, 15 years of silence breaking like a dam. "I prefer to sit with my family. I prefer to know my granddaughter. I prefer not to be hidden like some shameful secret." "Mother, "You're being dramatic," Robert said, but his voice was weak, uncertain. "Am I? When was the last time you invited me to Sunday dinner, Robert? When was the last time Emma was allowed to visit me?" "You live in South Philadelphia," Victoria said, as if it were a disease. "The neighborhood isn't safe for Emma." "The neighborhood where Robert grew up? Where his father taught him to change oil and fix engines? That unsafe neighborhood?" "That's enough." William Sr. had joined us, his commanding presence trying to regain control. "This is neither the time nor place." "Actually, it's the perfect time and place," Natalie interrupted. "You see, Mr. Ashford, Sterling Capital doesn't just investigate finances. We investigate character. And what I'm seeing here tells me everything I need to know about your family's values." She raised her voice slightly, not shouting, but ensuring everyone could hear. "This woman, this remarkable woman, stopped in a storm to help a stranger. She got on her hands and knees in the rain to fix my car, ruined her dress, made herself late to your party. And how do you repay her kindness? You hide her in a corner. You're ashamed of her because she worked for a living, because she doesn't have the right clothes or the right address." "Now see here," William started. "I'm not finished." Natalie's voice could have cut glass. "You want $500 million from my firm? Let me tell you what I see. I see a family that values appearance over substance, that treats their own blood like servants, that's so morally bankrupt they can't even recognize genuine goodness when it's standing right in front of them." The room was dead silent. 200 of Philadelphia's elite holding their breath. "Furthermore," Natalie continued, pulling out her phone, "my legal team has been reviewing some interesting documents regarding Thomas Pemberton's initial investment in Ashford Industries. Documents that suggest his shares were never properly transferred. Documents that indicate his estate, meaning Ruth, might still own a significant portion of this company." William's face went from pale to gray. "That's impossible. Everything was handled by your lawyers? The ones who also happen to represent your interests?" Natalie smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. "How convenient." Maxwell Porter, Thomas's old lawyer, stepped out of the crowd. I hadn't even realized he'd been listening. "I tried to contact Mrs. Pemberton about this matter several times over the years. Somehow my messages never seemed to reach her." "Because we were protecting her," Victoria said desperately. "She was grieving. The paperwork was complicated." "Protecting her?" Natalie laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean protecting yourselves from the possibility that a flower seller from South Philly might own more of Ashford Industries than you do." She turned to me, her voice gentling. "Ruth, I think it's time you knew the truth. Your husband didn't just invest in Ashford Industries. According to the original partnership agreement, he owned 51%. The champagne glass slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor like my entire understanding of the last 15 years. The shattered champagne glass at my feet seemed to wake everyone from their trance. A server rushed forward to clean it up, but Natalie held up her hand, stopping him. "Leave it," she said. "Let everyone see what happens when you shock a woman with the truth about her stolen inheritance." "This is preposterous," William sputtered, his face now purple with rage or fear, maybe both. "Thomas Pemberton was bought out in 1982. I have the paperwork." "Forged paperwork," Maxwell Porter interrupted, stepping fully into our circle. "I've been carrying the original documents for 15 years, waiting for the chance to give them to Ruth. Every time I tried to approach her, someone from your family intervened." He pulled a leather portfolio from his jacket. "The real papers, Mrs. Pemberton. Notarized, witnessed, filed with the Delaware Secretary of State. Your husband never sold his shares. He couldn't. The partnership agreement required both spouses' signatures for any transfer over 25%. My legs felt weak. Natalie guided me to a chair, not at the servants' table, but at the main table, right in the center of everything. "You're lying!" Victoria's voice had gone shrill. "This is some kind of shakedown." "Victoria," Robert said quietly, and something in his tone made everyone look at him. "Stop." "What?" "Just stop." My son looked older suddenly, tired. "I knew something was wrong when William made me sign those papers after Thomas died. Papers about Mom's pension. You said it was to help her, but she never saw a penny, did she?" "Robert, you don't understand. I understand that you've been lying to me for 15 years, that you made me complicit in stealing from my own mother." Emma broke free from her nanny again, running to me. This time no one stopped her. She climbed into my lap and I held her tight, breathing in her innocence while the world burned around us. "Grandma, why is everyone upset?" "Sometimes, sweetheart, the truth makes people uncomfortable." Natalie addressed the room, her voice carrying to every corner. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing something remarkable. The exposure of one of Philadelphia's greatest frauds. For 15 years, the Ashford family has been built on stolen money. Ruth Pemberton isn't just Robert's embarrassing mother, she's the majority owner of Ashford Industries." The room erupted. Phones appeared, pictures were taken, and whispers rose to a roar. Victoria looked like she might faint. William grabbed a chair for support. "This can't be legal," he gasped. "The statute of limitations doesn't apply to ongoing fraud," Natalie said smoothly. "Every dividend you've paid yourself, every decision made without Ruth's consent, every year you've filed false corporate documents, it's all actionable." She turned to me. "Ruth, you have choices. You can pursue criminal charges. You can demand 15 years of back dividends, which by my quick calculation would be approximately $40 million. You can take your rightful place as majority shareholder." $40 million. The number didn't even seem real. I'd been choosing between groceries and electricity bills while sitting on $40 million. "Or," Natalie continued, "you can negotiate, but from a position of power this time." Victoria dropped to her knees beside my chair, designer dress pooling on the floor. "Mother, please, think of Emma. Think of your son. We're family." "Family?" The word tasted bitter. "You made me eat with the servants at my granddaughter's birthday. You told me I embarrassed you by existing. That's not family, Victoria. That's cruelty." "I'm sorry," she sobbed, and for the first time since I'd met her, it might have been genuine. "I was wrong. We'll make it right. Whatever you want." "What I want?" I stood up, still holding Emma, feeling taller than I had in 15 years. "I want Sunday dinners with my granddaughter. I want to teach her about her grandfather, the man who built something from nothing with his own hands. I want my son to remember who he was before you convinced him to be ashamed of where he came from." I looked around the room, at all these people who'd dismissed me, who'd looked through me like I was invisible. "And I want an apology, a real one. Not for what you did to me. I'm old, I can handle it. But for what you tried to do to Emma, for trying to teach her that people's worth is measured by their bank accounts instead of their character." "Anything," William wheezed. "Anything you want, do you?" "No." I turned to him. "Not anything I want. Everything I'm owed. Maxwell, I want you to handle this. Full audit, full accounting. And Natalie?" I looked at the woman who'd changed everything. "Sterling Capital can have their $500 million deal, but you'll be working with me, not them." The king had been dethroned. The servants' table had become the seat of power. And somewhere, I could swear I heard Thomas laughing. "One more thing," I said, looking directly at Victoria. "That blue dress you always mocked? The one from Cousin Sarah's wedding? Thomas bought it for me with his last Christmas bonus. He said I looked like a queen in it. Turns out he was right." Emma hugged me tighter. "You are a queen, Grandma. My queen." And for the first time in 15 years, I believed it. Standing there with my granddaughter in my arms and my whole world turned upside down, I had a choice. 15 years of pain, of humiliation, of being made to feel worthless. I could have destroyed them. Every legal right, every dollar owed, every criminal charge possible. The woman they'd treated like nothing now held everything. What would you do? If the people who'd crushed your spirit for years suddenly needed your mercy, would you give it? Or would you take your revenge? I looked at Robert's face. My son, lost somewhere between the boy I raised and the man Victoria created. I looked at Emma, innocent in all this, and I made my decision. Comment below with what you think I should have done, and keep watching to see what I actually did. Maxwell Porter opened his leather portfolio with the reverence of a priest handling scripture. The room remained frozen. 200 of Philadelphia's elite watching a flower seller's lawyer destroy their understanding of power. "There's more," Maxwell said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Thomas Pemberton didn't just own 51% of Ashford Industries. He also left a second will, one that William Ashford personally witnessed and then concealed. William's face went from purple to white, so fast I thought he might have a stroke. That's a lie. Is it? Maxwell pulled out a yellow document. Your signature is right here, Mr. Ashford. December 15th, 2008. 3 months before Thomas died. You visited him in the hospital, remember? You promised to take care of Ruth. Dad? Robert's voice cracked like a teenager's. You saw Thomas before he died? You told me you were in Tokyo. William's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Maxwell continued reading. In the event of my death, all shares, holdings, and interests in Ashford Industries are to be held in trust for my wife, Ruth Pemberton, with full voting rights and dividend payments. Upon her death, said shares will pass to our son, Robert Pemberton. He paused. Not Robert Ashford. Thomas never acknowledged the name change. Victoria had gone silent, calculating behind her tears. I could see her mind working, trying to find an angle, an escape route. Furthermore, Maxwell read, if any attempt is made to deprive Ruth of her rightful inheritance, if any coercion or fraud is perpetrated against her, all shares revert immediately to the Thomas Pemberton Foundation for Vocational Education, a charity supporting blue-collar workers' children. The trap Thomas had laid from his deathbed was beautiful. Even dying, even knowing William's nature, he'd protected me. The foundation doesn't exist, William said desperately. It does now, Natalie interjected. I incorporated it this afternoon after Maxwell contacted me. The paperwork was filed at 3:47 p.m. Ruth is the sole trustee. But Mom, Robert interrupted, confusion clear in his voice. If Dad owned 51%, why were we never rich? Why did we live paycheck to paycheck? Maxwell answered before I could. Because in 1975, Ashford Industries was just 2 young men with a dream. Your father's investment was $50,000 from selling his father's house. The company barely broke even for years. Thomas never took dividends. He reinvested everything or lived off his auto shop income. The real value came after 2009, Natalie added, after Thomas died. That's when Ashford Industries exploded. The riverfront development, the casino contracts, the state building projects. The 51% that was worth maybe $200,000 when Thomas died is now worth over $200 million. And they never told us. Robert's voice was hollow. Mom, you've been living in poverty while sitting on $200 million. You planned this? Victoria turned on me. You've been planning this all along? No, I said simply. I've been selling flowers and missing my granddaughter. But Thomas knew what you were, all of you. He knew if he died, you'd try to steal from me, so he made sure you'd hang yourselves with your own greed. The original will, Maxwell continued, also contained a personal letter. May I, Ruth? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Maxwell's voice gentled as he read Thomas's words. My dearest Ruthie, if you're hearing this, it means they've finally shown their true colors. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you myself, but I knew Maxwell would find a way. Don't let them make you small, my love. You were always the strongest of us all. Take what's yours, not for revenge, but for justice. And remember, you're worth more than all their money combined. All my love, Thomas. I was crying now, not caring who saw. Emma patted my cheek with her small hand. Don't cry, Grandma. These are good tears, baby. So what happens now? William asked, his voice defeated. Now? I stood up, still holding Emma. Now you face a choice. We can do this the hard way. Criminal charges for fraud, forensic accounting for 15 years of stolen dividends, public humiliation in every newspaper from here to New York, or, Victoria's voice was barely a whisper, or we do this my way, the right way, the way Thomas would have wanted. I set Emma down gently and walked to the center of the room, addressing everyone. 15 years ago, I lost my husband, but I didn't just lose him. I lost my son to shame, my dignity to snobbery, my place in my own family to greed. You," I looked at William and Victoria, "didn't just steal money. You stole years. Years I can't get back. Years of Emma's life I missed. But Thomas taught me something. He said the best revenge against people who think you're nothing is to become something they never expected. So here's what's going to happen." I turned to Robert. "You're going to remember who you are, Thomas Pemberton's son, a man who knew the value of honest work. You're going to stop being ashamed of where you came from." To Victoria, "You're going to learn what it means to earn something instead of taking it. 500 hours of community service at the South Philadelphia Women's Shelter. Real work, not just writing checks." To William, "You're going to retire, effective immediately. The board will restructure with me as majority shareholder." "And if we refuse?" William asked. "Then Maxwell files the criminal complaint he's been drafting for 15 years. Delaware has no statute of limitations on felony fraud over $1 million. You've stolen $40 million. The math was simple. The choice was obvious. "But know this," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for Emma, so she grows up knowing that money isn't everything, that kindness matters more than class, that her grandmother might sell flowers, but she owns an empire, and that her grandfather," I touched the papers Maxwell held, "loved us enough to protect us, even from beyond the grave." The ballroom was silent except for Emma's voice. "Grandma's a superhero," from the mouths of babes, as Thomas used to say. The silence that followed my ultimatum was so complete I could hear the caterers in the kitchen, still preparing food for a party that had become a reckoning. Then Victoria did something I'd never seen before. She laughed. Not her usual tinkling society laugh, but something raw and bitter. "You think you've won?" She stood up, her designer dress wrinkled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything?" "I'm not taking anything, Victoria. I'm reclaiming what was already mine." "Yours?" Her voice rose to a shriek. "You know what was yours? A flower stand, a 2-room apartment, a husband who died broke. We gave you more than you ever deserved." "Victoria, stop!" Robert's voice cut through her tirade. He walked over to me, and for the first time in years I saw my boy, not William's protege, not Victoria's husband, but Thomas's son. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His voice broke. "I knew something was wrong. Deep down I knew. But it was easier to believe their lies than face what we'd done to you." "Robert, don't you dare!" Victoria started. "No." He turned on her, and I saw Thomas's strength in his spine. "No more. You made me ashamed of my father, a man who built something from nothing, a man who taught me that integrity matters more than income. You made me change my name because Pemberton wasn't prestigious enough." He looked at the crowd, then back at me. "I want to be Robert Pemberton again, if you'll let me." "Oh, Robert." I reached up to touch his face. "You were always Robert Pemberton. You just forgot for a while." "This is touching," William said, his voice dripping sarcasm. "But legally, you're finished," Natalie interrupted. "I've been recording this entire conversation, every admission of fraud, every confession of theft. My legal team is already preparing the documentation." She pulled out her phone, showing a recording app running. "Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state for private conversations, but this is a public gathering with over 200 witnesses. Every word is admissible." William staggered to a chair. The king of Philadelphia real estate, reduced to a frightened old man who'd built his empire on stolen foundations. "There's something else," Maxwell said, pulling out one more document. "Thomas left a provision specifically for Emma." Emma perked up at her name. "For me?" "Your grandfather never met you, sweetheart," I told her. "But he loved you anyway. He set aside something special, just for you." Maxwell read, "For my future grandchildren, should I not live to meet them, an education trust to be managed by Ruth with one condition. They must spend 1 summer working in a real job, retail, food service, manual labor. They must learn what their parents might forget, that every person who works for a living deserves respect." "That's manipulation," Victoria spat. "That's wisdom," I corrected. "Thomas wanted his grandchildren to understand what we understood, that there's dignity in all honest work." Emma tugged on my dress. "Grandma, does this mean I get to work at your flower stand?" "If you want to, sweetheart." "I want to. Can I start tomorrow?" Even Victoria's stone heart seemed to crack at her daughter's enthusiasm. "Please, Mom," Robert said quietly. "Give us a chance. Let us earn your forgiveness." I looked around the room, at the society people who'd ignored me, at the servants who'd shown me kindness, at Natalie who'd changed everything, at Maxwell who'd waited 15 years to deliver justice. "All right," I said. "Here are my terms. Non-negotiable." I counted on my fingers. 1. Full forensic audit of the last 15 years. Every penny accounted for. 2. The $40 million in stolen dividends goes to the Thomas Pemberton Foundation. 3. I take my rightful place as majority shareholder with Natalie Sterling as my advisor. 4. Sunday dinners, every week, at my apartment in South Philly. You'll eat my pot roast and like it." "Your apartment?" Victoria looked horrified. "My apartment, where Robert grew up, where Thomas lived, where real life happens." 5, I continued. "Family therapy, all of us, even Emma, so she can understand what healthy families look like. 6, Victoria does her community service and learns what real struggle looks like. 7, William retires and makes a public statement acknowledging the fraud." "And if we agree to all that," Robert asked, "then we start over, not as the family you tried to create, all surface and no substance, but as the family Thomas would have wanted. Complicated, imperfect, but honest." "I can't," William said. "The shame—" "The shame?" I walked over to him. "You want to talk about shame? Try being hidden at your granddaughter's birthday party. Try being told you're an embarrassment. Try watching your son pretend you don't exist. That's shame, William. What you're feeling? That's just consequences." Victoria stood up slowly. "If I do this, the community service, the therapy, all of it, you'll let Robert remain in the business?" "Robert can earn his place like everyone else, but he'll do it as Robert Pemberton, not as your puppet." She looked at her daughter, at her husband, at the ruins of her perfect world. "Then I agree." "Victoria," William started. "It's over, Dad," she said quietly. "We lost the moment we decided Ruth was worthless. We just didn't know it yet." One by one, they agreed. And as they did, I felt Thomas beside me, finally at peace. 3 months later, I stood in the boardroom of Ashford Industries, my boardroom now, looking out at the Philadelphia skyline. The same view William had lorded over for decades, but it looked different from where I stood. I could see South Philly in the distance, the neighborhoods where real people lived real lives. The quarterly reports, Mrs. Pemberton. My assistant, yes, I had an assistant now, handed me a folder. "Thank you, Marcus." It was the same Marcus who'd been the Worthingtons' driver, who'd sat with me at the servants' table that night. I'd hired him as my executive assistant the first week. He knew everyone's secrets and, more importantly, he knew what it felt like to be invisible. "Your son is here for the meeting," he said, "and Ms. Sterling. Send them in." Robert entered first. Robert Pemberton again, legally and proudly. He'd lost weight, gained some gray hair, but his eyes were clear in a way they hadn't been in years. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, sweetheart." Natalie followed, elegant as always, but warmer now, a friend rather than just an advisor. "Ruth, the foundation numbers are extraordinary. $40 million, properly invested, will send hundreds of kids to trade schools and colleges." "Thomas would have loved that," I said, touching the photo on my desk. "Thomas and me on our wedding day, both of us young and fearless." "How's Victoria?" I asked Robert. "She's trying. Yesterday at the shelter, she actually served food instead of just organizing it. She said one of the women reminded her of someone." "Who?" "You, if things had gone differently." We were quiet for a moment, absorbing that. She wants to know if she can come to Sunday dinner this week, Robert added. She's always been welcome. She just had to ask. A knock at the door interrupted us. Marcus poked his head in. Mrs. Pemberton? Emma's here with her art project. Send her in. Emma burst through the door like sunshine, carrying a poster board covered in photos and drawings. Grandma, I finished it! The project was titled My Hero, in glittery letters. There were pictures of me at the flower stand, at the board meeting, teaching her to arrange roses. But in the center was a drawing, 2 stick figures working on a car. That's Grandpa Thomas teaching you about engines, she explained. Even though I never met him, he's my hero too, because he protected us. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in that same strawberry shampoo, but now it was mixed with the smell of flowers from helping at my stand. Grandma, are you crying again? Good tears, baby, always good tears. The board meeting, Natalie reminded us gently. Right. I straightened up, keeping Emma's hand in mine. Let's go make some decisions about our company. Our company? Robert asked. Our company, the Pemberton Ashford Group. Thomas's name goes first. He earned it. As we walked to the boardroom, Emma skipping beside me, I thought about the journey from that servants' table to this moment. William had retired quietly, his empire reduced to a comfortable pension I'd approved. I wasn't cruel, just fair. Victoria was halfway through her community service, learning slowly that worth wasn't measured in dollars. The boardroom was full. Investors, partners, employees. As I took my seat at the head of the table, with Emma on my lap drawing flowers on my legal pad, no one questioned it. The flower seller from South Philly belonged here, had always belonged here. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, let's talk about the future. The Thomas Pemberton Foundation has identified 3 vocational schools in need of funding. I propose we match every dollar donated by our employees. That could cost millions, one board member said. Then we'd better make sure we earn millions, I replied. Any other questions? There weren't. After the meeting, as the sun set over Philadelphia, I stood in my office with Emma, Robert, and Natalie. Marcus brought in coffee and juice, serving us with the dignity every worker deserved. You know what Thomas used to say? I said, looking at his photo. He said the best revenge against people who think you're nothing is to become something they never expected. What did you become, Grandma? Emma asked. I thought about it. Myself, sweetheart. I became myself. I like yourself, she said, returning to her drawing. You know what? So do I. And for the first time in 15 years, I meant it. I was Ruth Pemberton, mother, grandmother, majority shareholder, flower seller. I was all of it, none of it diminished by the other parts. Thomas had been right all along. I was worth more than all their money combined. 6 months after that fateful birthday party, I stood in my South Philadelphia apartment, setting the table for Sunday dinner. The same apartment Victoria once deemed unsafe, now filled with the laughter of family. Real family. Mom, let me help, Robert said, carrying in the pot roast, Thomas's recipe, the one he'd learned from his Polish grandmother. I've got the potatoes, Emma announced, carefully balancing the bowl. Victoria stood in the doorway, uncertain. She'd lost that perfect polish, her hair in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater from Target. She looked younger, softer, more real. I brought dessert, she said quietly, holding a store-bought pie. I'm still learning to bake. That's perfect, dear. Come in. We sat around my small table, the one where Robert had done his homework, where Thomas had drawn his business plans, where I'd cried alone for so many years. Now it was full, crowded, messy, alive. Grandma, tell the story again, Emma begged, about the night everything changed. Again? You've heard it a dozen times. Please? So I told it, but this time with all of us adding parts. Robert remembered his shame. Victoria admitted her fear of never being good enough for the Ashfords. Even Emma added her confusion about why she couldn't see Grandma. I was so stupid, Victoria said, surprising us all. I had everything, and I couldn't see it. A mother-in-law who would have loved me if I'd let her. A husband who knew what real strength looked like. I threw it all away for... What? Approval from people who don't even call now that William's retired? We all made mistakes, I said, but we're here now. The shelter wants to offer me a job, Victoria said suddenly, running their job training program. The pay is nothing compared to before, but the women there, they remind me that I could have been them. One bad break, one lost job, one divorce. Are you going to take it? Robert asked. I think so. If Mom, thinks it's a good idea. It was the first time she'd called me Mom without being prompted. I think it's perfect, I said. My phone buzzed. Natalie texting from New York. The foundation just funded its 100th student. Thomas would be proud. Yes, he would. After dinner, as Victoria helped with dishes, something the old Victoria would have died before doing, Emma pulled out her school report. I got an A+, she announced, on my hero project. That's wonderful, sweetheart. The teacher said it was inspiring. She wants to meet you, Grandma. She said you're proof that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late, I repeated, looking at my family, broken and mended, like a vase glued back together with gold, more beautiful for having been shattered. Later, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone with Thomas's photo. The apartment was quiet, but it was a good quiet. Not the silence of abandonment, but the peace after a day well lived. We did it, Thomas, I whispered. Not the way we planned, but we did it. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, invisible, forgotten, accepting crumbs and calling them enough. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth wasn't in her bank account or her address, but in her heart, her choices, her refusal to stay small. Tomorrow, I'd go to the flower stand before heading to the office. I'd keep one foot in each world because both were me, the flower seller and the CEO, the mother-in-law they'd hidden, and the woman who'd brought them to their knees with kindness and truth. Emma's drawing was still on my refrigerator, me as a superhero. But I wasn't a superhero. I was just a woman who'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. Respect isn't given, it's demanded. And sometimes the universe conspires to help you demand it. Thomas always said I was worth more than all their money combined. Turns out, he was wrong. I was worth so much more than that. So that's my story, from the woman hidden at the servants' table to the one who owns the whole damn building. Not through luck or magic, but because I finally stopped letting others define my worth. If you've ever been made to feel small, remember this. Your value isn't in their opinion. It's in your heart, your choices, your refusal to accept less than you deserve. Like and subscribe if this story touched you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to demand respect. What would you have done in my place? Tell me below. Remember, you're worth more than all their money combined.